الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الخلق وسيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, there is a lot left. There's so much content, subhanAllah, that this could have easily been done in a 2-day intensive. In fact, it could have been done in an entire course throughout a semester. But at least we're going to walk away with benefits, doses of different things that we hopefully got exposed to. We're not going to get to the 3rd chapter of this book, which is companionship to the Creator and creation, because of the time constraints. This is the last session. Instead, I'm just going to skim and go through certain things that are in the PowerPoint that hopefully you'll find meaningful and fulfilling. So there's guidance on fasting here. And actually with Ramadan coming up, this is actually really, really important. This section goes over a bunch of different meanings. What's the meaning of Ramadan? What's the meaning of Siyam? Why do we fast? Right? Why do we fast? What did the Prophet ﷺ's Ramadan look like? I went through a few slides, Sister Noor, you're following along with me. These are the 4 pillars of the Prophet's Ramadan. Right? Temporary seclusion. In what? What does temporary seclusion mean? In Arabic, uzla marhaliya. What represents that in Ramadan? Yeah, i'tikaf. I'tikaf is temporary seclusion, right? Again, this. So, i'tikaf in its original meaning is meant to be this time where I dedicate and focus myself inwardly on my soul and my relationship with Allah Azza wa Jal. That's the idea behind the i'tikaf. It's not meant to be this like marathon, where it becomes almost like this night culture, this hangout type of thing, where we stay to the masjid until 2 a.m. and then we go find some suhoor at an IHOP or at a diner or mash'arifeh. That's not what i'tikaf is. I'tikaf is something more meaningful than that. It's actually habsun nafsi ala ta'atillah azza wa jal. It's for me to be in a state of full focus. Temporary silence. That's in the Prophet's Ramadan too. Right? Like we said, when holding the tongue, when someone argues with you. Hunger. It's an obvious meaning. Wakefulness. And that's with qiyam, right? These are the 4 pillars of the Prophet's Ramadan. And there's a lot to say about that. Perhaps in one of the talks about Ramadan in the coming weeks, we'll talk about this in more detail, inshaAllah ta'ala. We have a bunch of talks coming up about Ramadan in the coming weeks. There's guidance on zakah. Virtues of zakah. How does the way I use my money affect the state of my iman? Right? There's so much guidance on this that we can talk about. The Prophet ﷺ tells us in the hadith that the ruin of individuals and nations has been because of miserliness. Right? Prophet ﷺ says, فَإِنَّ الشُّحَّ أَهْلَكَ مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ. Right? Miserliness has led to the ruin of people. Does my wealth really affect my iman? The answer is, of course it does. Of course it does. The way I use my wealth, does it really affect my iman? Of course. It could make me or it could break me. So this is some of the guidance on zakah. Financial prosperity through spiritual ruin. Right? Financial prosperity, you want to keep the extra money in your pocket and you don't want to give the zakah of your money. Prophet ﷺ tells us, on the Day of Judgment, this is going to be a source of great pain for people, right? وَلَا يَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ يَبْخَلُونَ بِمَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ وَخَيْرًا لَهُمْ. Don't let the people think, don't let those who are stingy with what Allah gave them think that that's good for them. It's actually bad for them. On the Day of Judgment, they're going to be wrapped around. Their bodies are going to be wrapped with the money that they withheld from zakah, right? Whoever Allah gives money and He doesn't give it zakah, then it'll wrap around them in the form of a snake. And it'll say to the person, أَنَا مَالُكَ أَنَا كَنْزُكَ. I'm your wealth, I'm your treasure that you kept for yourself. Right? Right? It's a responsibility, not a favor. Right? And then there's so much to say about this. We don't have time for that. You know, zakah is, the virtues and etiquettes of dealing with zakah, it shapes the mindset of the believer. I am responsible for this. I'm not doing anyone a favor when I give zakah. I'm actually doing something that I must and have to give. All of this, you could read it on your own from the PowerPoint. It's a responsibility, not a favor. There's a big consequence for abandoning social welfare causes. That's the hadith the Prophet ﷺ says, and the Prophet ﷺ says, وَلَمْ يَمْنَعُوا زَكَاةَ أَمْوَالِهِمْ إِلَّا مُنِعُوا الْقَطْرَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ وَلَوْلَا الْبَهَائِمْ لَمْ يُمْطَرُوا. Prophet ﷺ says, whenever people deny and withhold zakah, they will be denied the blessings from the heavens, even the rain from the heavens. And if it wasn't for the animals, it wouldn't have rained. If it wasn't for the animals, it wouldn't have rained. So then why in some places where there's complete disbelief do we find such greenery and such prosperity? Why? This is istidraj. Sometimes Allah gives people, you guys know what istidraj means? You know, when someone, the Prophet ﷺ says in the hadith, when you see Allah giving someone, yet they're audaciously continuing and brazenly continuing in sin, then know that what He's giving them is actually a trap. It's a trap for them. They're being drawn into something and they're going to face something really regretful. It's going to come to them swiftly, right? That's a scary thing, right? If you see someone given something, yet they are sinful in their ways and oppressive in their ways, know that this is a form of punishment that is going to unfold on them. There's guidance on business and trade. I didn't get a chance to add that to the PowerPoint, but it's there. In the PowerPoint on refraining from acts of disobedience, because this is our second visit to chapter 2 of our book, right? In chapter 2, he told us about the eyes, the ears, the tongue, and he continues to talk about other things, the stomach, the feet, the hands. In this PowerPoint, I added some of the consequences that our scholars teach us about sins, consequences of sins. There's a lot of detail here where the Prophet ﷺ warns us. Look at this hadith, for example. Beware of the undermined sins, for they gather upon the individual until they cause his ruin. إِيَّاكُمْ وَمُحَقَّرَاتُ الذُّنُوبِ فَإِنَّهُنَّ يَجْتَمِعْنَ عَلَى الرَّجُلِ حَتَّى يُهْلِكْنَهُ. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said. What are the undermined sins? Those things that people think are light, but they're actually severe. Those small sins, those small things, imagine that, right? Small pebble. If you get hit in the head with a small pebble, will it hurt? Well, maybe. I guess it depends on the intensity it's thrown with. But anyway, regardless, imagine 1,000 small pebbles. Imagine a ton. You know, you see this in the collapsed buildings sometimes, right? It's all like all of the debris and the broken rocks and everything like that. All those rocks piled up together, not even the strongest man could emerge from some of the piles of rubble that could mount on a certain person. Right? It's the reality. Small things could ruin people, right? What are some of the consequences of sins? What are some of the consequences of sins? One of these consequences is being denied rizq. Sins could cause a person to be denied rizq, provisions. Right? The hadith the Prophet ﷺ says what? It says, وَإِنَّ الْعَبْدَ لَا يُحْرَمُ الرِّزْقَ بِذَنْبِ يُصِيبُهُ. The individual is denied part of his sustenance because of a sin that he commits. Another consequence for sin is spiritual disconnect. I feel an emptiness in my heart. You know, we feel this sometimes. Sometimes you feel like your heart is empty, there's a void. I just don't feel comfortable on the inside. Sometimes this is coming about because of a sin. I need to heal from something that went wrong on my inside. So spiritual disconnect. Sometimes this could become so severe that the person can't even take being around the masjid. Makes him uncomfortable. Imagine that. You know, some people would love being in the masjid. Some people can't stand being in the masjid, right? It's a reality of sin. Like that, I would become very uncomfortable being in a place where there's remembrance of Allah because I'm not used to it. Social disconnect. Like imagine that if I'm someone who endeavors this path where like all of my associates are, you know, people I got to know through kaba'ir. Nasallahu salama. Through bars and alcohol or clubs or mash'arif or gambling and mash'arif. Those are all my associates. If I find myself around people who the only thing they know how to talk about is La ilaha illallah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, remembrance of Allah, Quran, good things, doing nice things, I'm going to feel a social disconnect. I can't connect with these people. So that's one of the consequences of sins, is that it cuts us off from good people. That, we no longer feel like our hearts have an affinity, with those around us that are good. I can't connect. Immediate consequences. Sometimes there are immediate consequences. Sometimes there's delayed consequences for sin. Sometimes there's two sins that are expressly listed as being a source of immediate consequence, right? The hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, إِثْنَانِ عُقُوبَتُهُمَا مُعَجَّلَةٌ فِي الدُّنْيَا. There are two things. Their punishment is hastened in the dunya. What are they? الْبَغْيُ وَالْعُقُوقُ. Baghi, oppression, and the other one is uquq, wretchedness to parents. Wretchedness to parents. And some other variations of the hadith add qati'at al-rahim to that, cutting off ties of kin. So sometimes there's immediate consequences. Sometimes there's delayed consequences. That the person won't see the consequence of their actions until they meet Allah Azza wa Jal. And there's actually a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, that says this. Look, if Allah Azza wa Jal wants goodness for a servant, He allows him to face his punishment for his actions in this dunya. فَمَا يَبْرَحِ الْبَلَاء بِالْعَبْدِ حَتَّى يَتْرُكَهُ يَمْشِي عَلَى الْأَرْضِ مَا عَلَيْهِ خَطِيئَةٌ. Prophet ﷺ says, the individual continues to be afflicted with things until he walks upon this earth cleansed completely from sins. Sometimes that happens to people. Sometimes people make a lot of devastating decisions in their life, and then Allah blesses this person with a big trial in the end of their life, a terminal illness that they deal with very patiently, for example, and they're just like patient and they have a lot of rida and tawakkul and they're saying alhamdulillah, and that terminal illness erases a lot of the bad things and bad decisions they made throughout their lifetime. It's a blessing from Allah Azza wa Jal if Allah blesses someone with that reality, right? Not that you should want that. No one should want a terminal illness or affliction or trials. But if it happens, it might be my means to expiation, right? You wanted to say something? Go ahead. What do you mean? Yes? Not necessarily. It's telling you that this could be the result of sins. Now, it's not going to happen immediately from one sin. I committed one sin and all of a sudden, that's it. My heart's all gone. These are lifestyle altering things. So, if I keep down this path, then I will find these things starting to happen. And of course, everyone commits a sin. And we're not talking about this. We're talking about when these things become habitual. They become, a cycle. They become a lifestyle. They become something I embrace. This is when we're talking about it. Everyone's going to commit a sin, right? But sometimes even from that one sin, like say, like the whole spiritual disconnect. Like sometimes you know it. Like say if you hurt someone that is a very good person. You wronged them. You shouldn't have said something to this person. You might feel very horrible about it. You feel like very dark on the inside. Man, I said such bad things to this person and I made them cry. And I really, really shouldn't have done that. And I feel so, so regretful. And now I just feel like empty on the inside. I just feel like I'm having a horrible day. Who doesn't feel that at a certain point? So at a certain degree, you might feel that. But when they become lifestyle things, you'll even feel it a whole lot more, right? That's what we're saying here. Sometimes, again, this is all towards a lifestyle thing. Sometimes sins could even affect the physical appearance, right? There is a radiance for acts of worship, and there is a darkness for acts of sinfulness, right? Sometimes when you commit sin, it denies you opportunities to do good. It denies you. Why? The Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّ الصِّدْقَ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْبِرِّ وَإِنَّ الْبِرَّ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. Being honest leads to benevolence, and benevolence leads to Jannah. وَإِنَّ الْكَذِبَ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْفُجُورِ. Lying leads to transgression and rebellion against Allah leads to hellfire. So these things become a cycle. They become a process. So one of the blessings of doing one good deed is it opens up an opportunity to do many more good deeds. And one punishment for doing a bad deed is it opens up many opportunities to do more bad deeds, right? And like someone who lies once, and needs to lie a second time to cover up his first, and a third time to cover up his second, and then it becomes something, and you find that the person lies 1 time, 10 times, and he continues to lie until he's written by Allah as a kadhab, a liar, and it becomes this pathological thing that, the person becomes so good at lying that you can't even tell. Like it's pathological. You can't even tell that this person embraced lying to such a high degree that they've convinced themselves that the lie is actually the truth, right? So that's one of the realities, that it's a lifestyle thing, akhi. So it's a lifestyle thing. When if you've never lied before in your life and you try to lie for the very first time, guess what? You're going to be horrible at it. You're going to sweat. It's going to make you slur your speech. It's going to make you say something that doesn't make any sense, and it's going to be so obvious that you're not being truthful, right? But then when you continue to do it, you become an expert at it, right? You want to say something else? I've never heard that hadith, like everyone having one sin. I've never heard some distinction like that. I'm sure that we all have multiple sins. Jibl al-hadith. Get me the hadith. I don't know what you're exactly referring to. Going on here, one of the progressed conditions from sinfulness is normalization of sin. Normalization of sin. Ilful ma'siyah. It becomes so common for a person to do sin that it becomes second nature to them. Right? That's it. That if someone was to say something so heinous in their presence, it doesn't faze them. It's one of the bad consequences from sin. Normalization of sin is actually one of the worst consequences of sin. That I could see someone doing kaba'ir in my presence and I won't even feel something happening. I don't feel like it's something wrong. And this is, so becoming desensitized to sinfulness is one of the consequences of being around sins and doing sins a lot. The biggest consequence for sin is boasting about sins, right? That Allah Azza wa Jal conceals you and protects you, but then you go ahead and you brag about it, right? There's a hadith that actually mentions this. And the one who actually falls into this actually rarely is blessed with the opportunity to repent from it. The person is actually bragging about the things that they did they know it's a major sin. How could they go on and brag about it, right? As if they think they got away with it. Of course they didn't get away with it. No, they're going to be held accountable for it on the Day of Judgment. So boasting about sins is one of the most progressed consequences of sin. And these are just details to those slides that are there. So that's about, and then it mentions about silence, about some of the flaws pertaining to speech, like this figure over here. These are things that we spoke about earlier. Like, what are some of the flaws relating to speech? One of them is argumentation. Whoever avoids arguing while he has the right to, Allah will build for him an abode in the highest area of paradise. That's one. Vulgar speech. The believer is not an accuser, a curser, or one who is vulgar and obscene. Another flaw relating to speech is lying. We went over that one. These are some lessons from Surah Al-Hujurat. Misinformation is another sin relating to speech. Bad assumptions, suspicions of others, unfounded suspicions. These are all consequences for sins. These are things. One of the other things that the book goes over some of the diseases of the heart. It goes over envy, and here you'll find the causes of envy, right? And envy is one of the destructive diseases of the heart. There's a lot of hadith that tells us about the dangers of envy. Actually, it was the cause of the demise of nations past, right? The effects of envy are real. They can easily affect people's well-being, their health, physical, spiritual, and emotional. There's a hadith here that tells us The Prophet ﷺ looked at the children of Sayyidina Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, and he said, why do I see the bodies of the children of my brother very frail and weak? All right? So then their mother, Asma bint Umays, she said that the children of Ja'far are easily afflicted by ayn, the evil eye. So she asked the Prophet, should I do ruqya for them? Prophet ﷺ said, yes, do ruqya for them. So the envy is a very destructive disease. It's a form of spiritual oppression, by the way. Some people don't believe in envy, right? Because they say, well, why would people be allowed to hurt someone else just by having ill will towards them? That's not fair. Why would Allah allow that? It's a form of oppression. Just as people oppress people physically and financially, they oppress people through the evil eye, right? So that's the consequence of envy. There's causes for envy, obviously. Arrogance, enmity, power hunger, objecting to Allah's decree, disliking goodness for others. These are all causes for envy in the hearts of people. It speaks about envy, it speaks about riya, it speaks about ujub. Riya is ostentation, by the way. Ujub is conceit and vanity. It speaks about arrogance. And that's pretty much the diseases that our book speaks about. So you can find those details inside the book. Now, I guess this is a good point for us to take a pause and use the rest of our time just for Q&A. So we have about 15 minutes that we can use for people who have any questions that they'd like to ask. And like I said, we'll be done for today at 5:30. So 5:30, we'll stop. Who has questions? Who has questions? Any question you'd like to ask? Could be relating to the subject or it could be in general. Questions? تفضل. هل مطلوب من الحتة الأخيرة مرة ثانية؟ تمام. All right, look, just to summarize what he just asked, he said that he heard that there is a story behind this book. I actually heard that story for another book of Imam Ghazali, Al-Munqidh min al-Dalal. I forgot what they translated as, but I'll translate it myself. Munqidh means salvation from misguidance. Salvation from misguidance. Something that saves you and rescues you from the clenches of dalal. That's another beautiful book that Imam Ghazali wrote. Imam Ghazali, as a great figure and luminary of our past, actually went through his own journey through self-reformation. It's a very beautiful thing to, I guess, look into that, to see how such a brilliant person could have the capacity to rethink his choices. In fact, they say that he locked himself away for years on end, studying and reflecting. And when he finally emerged from his seclusion, he brought forth his book, Ihya Ulum ad-Din, the revival of the teachings of religions. So Imam Ghazali is a very unique character in our past. He dealt with a lot of different things and a lot of different subjects. One of the things that our brother was talking about, in this book, I might find it difficult for me to hold myself to such high standards. There's a lot of details here. How am I supposed to live all the along according to all of this content of this guiding of the content of this guidance? And if I don't find myself at that level, then what should I do? The answer is, again, I think this journey that he went through is an example for each of us in our journey with worship. If I'm honest with myself, if I ask myself the right questions, if I assess where I was and where I am and where I'm going to have this own journey with transformation that I find sweetness in it. Now look, the halawa, or the sweetness that you find in a worship, is in this journey itself that you're taking with the act of worship. It's not about the motions, it's not about the tangible, it's not about the material, it's about something behind all that, the meanings, the concepts. What causes you to feel sweetness in your heart? What causes you to feel sweetness in your heart? It is those meanings settling in your heart. If I'm doing the prayers, I could pray as long as I want. If my heart's not in it and my mind's not there, then I'm not going to feel this feeling of sweetness, right? So what do I need to do? I need to really start asking myself the hard questions. I need to really hold myself accountable. I need to have conversations with and then slowly, سددوا وقاربوا. خذوا من الأعمال ما تطيقون. إن هذا الدين متين فأوغل فيه برفق ولن يشاد الدين أحد إلا غلبه. The Prophet ﷺ says that this religion is great. It's massive. It's very strong. There's a lot there. It's a very weighty. And anyone who tries to incorporate everything in their life all at once will be overwhelmed by everything that's in the guidance of Islam. You won't be able to do it. So what do I need to do? I need to have my own journey. I'm not going to figure it out from day one. This journey is going to slowly transform and develop. And if I'm really focusing on reflecting on the meanings behind the actions, then even the small that I do will be massive in reward. This is what I would say to that. Allahu A'lam. Yeah. Who else has a question? Go ahead. There's a lot of people with, ideas and beliefs that I don't necessarily. Well, the funny thing is, people after that transformation command, they don't accept from. There's people who tell you that Ihya is a book of innovations. It has so many weak hadiths in it. Don't ever read the Ihya. There's people who say that. They have such bizarre, hardline ideas that are unfounded historically. And they don't realize that one of the scholars of some of the scholars of the past, they said, "Man lam yaqra al-ihya falaysa min al-ihya." Someone who doesn't read the book. That's how valuable a text it was. You know the value of a text when you find the people who are proponents of an idea focusing on it, and enemies of an idea also focusing on it. You'll find people who actually did not align with Imam Ghazali ideologically, actually spent the time to explain and abridge his book. We have this series of, Imam Ibn al-Jawzi, Imam Ibn Qudam al-Maqdisi, we had Minhaj al-Qasidin, then Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin. It shows you that there's value in it, and I know that might not mean much to someone who doesn't know what these books are all about. I realize that, but there is this simplistic, dismissive approach to Islamic discourse that says, hey, you know what? Let's just discard all of this from our history, right? This book, Revival of the Teachings of Faith, it's full of weak hadiths. Don't waste your time with it, right? You know who would say that? Someone who has no understanding of what knowledge is about, right? So there are those who, before the transformation, say that Imam Ghazali had certain theological beliefs that don't conform with mainstream Islam. And again, it's a very simplistic, dismissive approach. Even in theology, do we have one monolithic approach? Well, there are certain narratives in our modern times that want you to think that mainstream Sunni Islam doesn't have any differences of opinion. Everyone in Aqidah agrees it's this way. If you're not like this, you are a mubtadi', you are an innovator, right? This dismissive, hardline approach is actually one of the destructive features of the modern day. And it's a very destructive cancer to the history of our ummah. That people are, seeking to break down this Islamic tradition. Now, I'm not telling you Islamic tradition is perfect. I'm not telling you Imam Ghazali is perfect. Who's perfect? Who's perfect? Who on the Prophet ﷺ, ma'soom, right? The Prophet ﷺ is ma'soom, right? But everyone has things that were not necessarily on point. Right? And, still, even now, some people have this destructive approach to fiqh. Oh man, don't tell me Hanafi, Shafi'i, Maliki, ومش عارف إيه. Tell me what Rasulullah ﷺ did. Allahu Akbar. Tell me what the Prophet did, right? As though Am Sheikh Fulan, who listens to the fatwa of Sheikh Fulan from country Fulan, this said country, is somehow more aware of the Prophet than Imam Shafi'i and Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik. This destructive approach is so simplistic. Wallahi, my advice to you guys, don't buy into it. And unfortunately, you'll find that those who are limited to an English readership actually get exposed to this ideology a lot more because sometimes the power of state, the power of money, don't ask me which state, don't ask me which money, don't ask me, but sometimes that is what affects the narrative. What's going to get pumped into the media? Those who have the most power. You think that the Islamic, the scene of learning, or what's on the scene in terms of learning about the deen, you think that those who are most credible and most knowledgeable are the ones on the fada'iyat and the public casts and all that stuff. No, they're not. There's tons of scholars who are mountains of knowledge, who are completely obscure to the masses, because what? They weren't sponsored by a state. They were left to, live their days in isolation from the public discourse for the ummah, because they didn't have the millions behind them to promote and market their material, right? Again, there's a lot to this. I know I went on some tangents there, but anyway, that's my belief. State sponsorship of things goes a long way. Who else has a question? Go ahead. You shouldn't give salam during a khutbah, and you shouldn't reply to a salam during a khutbah. If someone says salam to you, if you just gesture to them, that's fine, but you shouldn't talk. You shouldn't talk. What's another question? Go ahead. It's really tough. It's really tough because if you're in a society that promotes certain things that fundamentally contradict with your values, that's why the Prophet ﷺ says that there will be a time when those who are holding on to their deen are holding on to burning coal, right? Al-qabidu ala dinih kal-qabidu ala jamr, right? Some of the hadiths, other hadiths that are in that vein, explain that behind you are the days of patience. فَإِنَّ مِنْ وَرَائِكُمْ أَيَّامَ الصَّبْرِ. And the reason why those were referred to as the days of patience is because the people of those times will not find those who assist them in doing acts of goodness. Right? So it's really tough. When everything around you is telling you to do munkar and you still do ma'roof, when everything around you is pushing you to do sin and you still do the right thing, that speaks volumes to character. So how do you not get desensitized? You could try to limit that. There's things you could do to try to limit that, right? Well, right, you have a choice at work, all right? There's dinner parties, there's holidays and celebrations, and at these holidays and celebrations, there's alcohol, there's mixing, there's kada. Do you really need to be there? Well, then why would you put yourself there? Can you limit your exposure to these things? All right. Now, in our times, you'll find that if you go to certain locations, you'll find yourself in surrounded by the darkness of sin most. Like you go to the beaches, right, where there's exposure of awrat and so on and so forth. Why would you expose yourself to that? That's a choice you make, right? You could limit that. limit yourself from being around those types of environments, right? You want to watch something on TV, be selective in what you choose to watch, right? But if you choose to buy into the culture fully, I'm going to go out to the movies and the malls and the hangouts, and I'm going to go to coffee shops, and I'm going to go to the oceans, and then you're going to come and say, I just feel so ugly on the inside. Well, of course you do. There's a lot of element of choice. That's what I'm saying. It's difficult, but there's a lot of element of choice. And I need to try to make the right choices. I know it's 5:31, and we said that we're going to finish at 5:30. So we're going to, before we close, guys, I just want to emphasize this. There's a survey. If you go to the group that we're on for the class, there was a survey shared. We want your feedback. I took your feedback the first time. We tried to go at a slower pace. Yeah? We didn't. What's up? طيب, but we have Salat al-Maghrib now. So ask me later. So if you go to the WhatsApp group, beginning of guidance, survey. Go to it. There's a survey there. Give me your feedback. All right? What topics interest you? What did you like about today? What did you wish was different? I'm sure some of you are going to say, we wish we had more chances to ask questions. I'm sorry that you didn't have more chances to ask questions. But anyway, give me the feedback, and we'll try to accommodate it next time. Do you want to see a one-day intensive next time, or do you want to see a two-day intensive next time? Tell me what you want, and we'll take it into consideration. I already said the date I'm planning, and you can mark your calendars if I'm still alive, inshallah. The plan is June 1st, June 2nd is going to be the next intensive. I'm hoping to try out the experience of a two-day intensive. The reason why I chose June 1st, June 2nd is it's right before Dhul Hijjah. And I know in the 10 of Dhul Hijjah people are busy. And in May, it's busy between Memorial Weekend and the people are taking their exams in colleges, so there's not many good weekends in May. So 1st of June is when I'm planning the next intensive. We'll figure out the subject. I still haven't finalized. But give me your feedback through that survey so that we take it into consideration as we're planning for the next one. Like I said, this PowerPoint, was this PowerPoint shared, by the way, Sister Noor? Was it shared in the WhatsApp group? Yeah. Eventually what we're going to do is we're going to put these lectures on the website, inshallah, with the PowerPoint so everyone can access it. That's the plan, bi'idhnillah. For now, you'll find the lectures or the 5 sessions we had today all on the WhatsApp group, and there's the PowerPoint. It should be there. There is this survey. Take advantage of it. I hope that you benefited something from today, and I ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us and use us for more and more goodness, inshallah. And we're going to conclude with dua. As I said, after we pray Maghrib, we're going to do the other class. We're going to do the other class. Anyone who wants to stay for that, you're welcome to stay for it. It's Amthal al-Quran. It's the parables of the Quran. We've been going through that for the past several weeks. And inshallah, we didn't want to miss today, so we're still going to keep it. Inshallah, we'll start with that. And conclude with dua. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم تقبل منا أعمالنا اللهم احفظها لنا اللهم احفظها لنا يوم الدين اللهم اجعلها شفاعة لنا وخيرا لنا وبركة لنا في دنيانا وأخرانا اجعلها بركة لنا ولأولادنا وذرياتنا اللهم انفعنا بهذا العلم اللهم اجعله لنا علما نافعا اللهم اجعله لنا علما نافعا اللهم ربنا ارزقنا حظا وافرا من العلم ووفقنا لخير العمل به يا رب العالمين والدعوة إليه اللهم ربنا استعملنا لنشر دينك اللهم استعملنا لنشر دينك اللهم اجعلنا من أوليائك وأحبابك اللهم اجعلنا من أوليائك وأحبابك وأنصار دينك محمد ودين نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم اجعلنا من أنصار محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم واجعلنا من الذين يحببون الله إلى خلقه اللهم اجعلنا من الذين يحببون الناس بالدين ويقربونهم إلى سبيلك وإلى رشدهم وإلى طاعتك يا رب العالمين اللهم استعملنا ولا تستبدلنا اللهم استعملنا ولا تستبدلنا، اللهم آثرنا ولا تؤثر علينا، اللهم آثرنا ولا تؤثر علينا، اللهم ربنا طهر قلوبنا، اللهم طهر قلوبنا واستر عيوبنا واغفر زلاتنا، اللهم ما كان بيننا وبينك فتجاوز عنه، وما كان بيننا وبين خلقك فتحمله عنا، اللهم ما كان بيننا وبينك فتجاوز عنه، وما كان بيننا وبين خلقك فتحمله عنا. اللهم ربنا إنا نسألك بأسمائك الحسنى وصفاتك العليا أن تفك الكرب عنا وعن كل مكروب من أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم أنت به عليم. اللهم فك الكرب عن أمة حبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها. اللهم إنا نسألك في هذه الساعة المباركة قبل أذان المغرب، نسألك ربنا الفرج والنصر القريب العاجل لإخواننا في غزة وفي فلسطين. اللهم انصرهم نصرا عزيزا مؤزرا، اللهم انصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم، اللهم انصرهم على من ظلمهم، اللهم انصرهم على من ظلمهم، اللهم اردد أعداءهم على أعقابهم خائبين خاسئين خزايا نادمين. اللهم لا تجعل لأعدائهم صرفا ولا نصرا، اجعل تدميرهم في تدبيرهم، واجعل الدائرة عليهم يا رب العالمين. يا قوي وعزيز أنت حسبنا نعم المولى ونعم الوكيل. ولي أمورنا خيارنا ولا تولي أمورنا شرارنا، ولا تسلط علينا بذنوبنا من لا يخافك ولا يرحمنا. اللهم لا تجعل مصيبتنا في ديننا، ولا تجعل الدنيا أكبر همنا ولا مبلغ علمنا ولا إلى النار مصيرنا. اللهم اجعل الجنة هي دارنا وقرارنا مع المقربين الشهود في مقعد صدق عند مليك مقتدر. اللهم اختم لنا بخير أجمعين وألحقنا بالصالحين واجعلنا من ورثة جناتك جنات النعيم يا أرحم الراحمين. آمين آمين. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خير. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all and accept from you. Inshallah, we're going to be having adhan of Maghrib now, and then we're going to be praying Salat al-Maghrib after that. As I said before, this subject is continued next week, in the next week's intensive with Sheikh Yasser and myself, the Adab intensive with prophetic living. If you want to study it more, just scan the QR code and join us next weekend in the masjid here.